Chapter 18, Subdivisions and Developments. In this chapter, we're going to describe various methods of developing and subdividing of land. We're going to identify the impacts of environmental regulations and other laws on sales, health, and safety and building regulations. So let's start off with this. Term assemblage. You're not going to get this term on exams, but it's when you combine two or more smaller lots into one lot. That's called assemblage. You're assembling them together, okay? And that increase in value is known as plottage value. A subdivider is somebody who buys undeveloped acreage of land. And then they, following all the laws and regulations, they get all the permits and such. They divide it into smaller lots for sale to individuals or to developers, or sometimes the subdivider themselves is a developer, so that it's for their own use. After they do everything that's required to prepare the land for development, all the environmental stuff, all the testing, all the all the legal stuff, and then they prepare it to sell. You know, I know a group of people that do this that I taught a private class to, two guys in this organization to get their real estate licenses because they were subdividers. All they did was buy land, and they had a team of people, all their college buddies. There were lawyers and engineers and environmental people and everything, and they worked together to buy acreage of land and then profitably subdivide it, prepare it for construction, basically do everything that's required to, now it's ready that you could develop on it. And now the land is worth more if you could sell it, selling raw land that's not ready to be developed on versus raw land that's got all the permits and legal stuff out of the way so that you could start developing on it tomorrow if you want, is worth a lot more. So that's all these people did, is they bought up raw land. They found a way to profitably subdivide it and sell it off at a much marked up price because it's ready to build on. So they were buying large properties, and they wanted to get their real estate license because they realized that they were giving away so many deals. Because when they come across deals that were under $10 million, those are considered their small deals. They were just giving them as referrals to real estate agents, not realizing that they could make a lot of money off of those referred business, so that when that under $10 million deal of land sells, that they could earn the commission on it. They were leaving all that money on the table. So it was worth it. They paid me to go to them and teach them a private class just for two guys until they got their license. So I was traveling up to them, to their offices, to teach them every day. Now we got Zoom and all that. We could have done it remotely. But okay, so a developer is, they build homes or other buildings on lots, and then they sell those buildings. Sometimes a subdivider can be the builder as well, like I was saying. Now, in New Jersey, when a second lot is sold off of a larger parcel, the development is classified as a subdivision. And the state of New Jersey allows municipalities to decide what constitutes a major subdivision requiring a public hearing and what is a minor subdivision which does not. Minor subdivisions include small subdivisions, ones with 1 or 2 lots, or even maybe 6 lots. It depends on the municipality, is the one that decides what constitutes a major subdivision that requires a public hearing and what constitutes a minor subdivision that does not. So they do not, minor subdivisions usually don't require new streets to be made or off-site improvements or public hearings for approval. They could, but not necessarily. Depends on what the municipality considers a minor subdivision. So those major subdivisions require public hearings to get approval because they'll have more of an impact on the community in some way. They have a lot more issues to address and must give the public an opportunity to pose questions about those major subdivisions. How many homes are being built? Is it going to have an impact on the schools, on the traffic, on the roads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So some examples of issues that larger subdivisions come across are the roads, the traffic, the burden on the local school districts, public works services, emergency services like police, fire, waste removal, the water and sewage treatment, and drainage and environmental impact needs to be studied, um, as well as so all these issues have to be addressed before getting the approval for a major subdivision. So land planning precedes the actual subdividing process, right? You got to have a plan in place before you just start subdividing. So land planning precedes the actual subdividing process, which must comply with your local municipality's master plan for how that land is going to be used. So planning boards and planning commissioners are often involved in that land planning process. Dedication is when the developer or the subdivider gives land to the government for a public use, like streets, schools, and parks. You already have that word. You should already have that word added to your definition list from chapter 5, I think it was. If you don't, add it in now. Dedication is when you give land to the government for a greater public good, like streets, schools, and parks. We'll actually have a place to highlight that somewhere on page 340. Assurance by bonding that the sewers and street costs are going to get paid for. Compliance with zoning ordinances governing the use and lot size, fire and safety ordinances, building and construction codes, etc., etc. A percolation test, ooh, this is a new term. A percolation test, or for short, we call it a PERC test, is a test of how well soil absorbs liquids for drainage and runoff and septic systems. And it basically is a test of the soil to see, to check its capacities to absorb water and how quickly it can do so. So let's do these highlights here. Dedication of land for streets, schools, and parks. That's on page 340. Basically, it's giving land to the government. And then you highlight down here that a percolation test is a test of the soil's absorption and drainage capacities. So local authorities usually require land planners to submit information about how they intend to satisfy sewage disposal and water supply requirements. Development and or septic tank installation may first require a percolation test to see how well the soil absorbs the liquids for the drainage capacity. So frequently a land planner also has to submit an an environmental impact report, or EIS, environmental impact study. Here I have a video for you about how percolation tests get done. So let me share the audio here, and let's see how those percolation tests get done. They also talk about the not just how the percolation test gets done, but he also talks about the septic system here. Remember, I've shown you septic systems and how they work a couple times, but they give a little explanation here as well. So let's watch this little video here from This Old House. You guys remember that program on TV, right? This Old House, how to do improvements.
One of the first things to consider when building a house like this out in the country is a septic plan. What to do with the waste and water that needs to leave that building. Now, it needs to go into a septic system. There's a couple of key components to a septic system. One is a septic tank. Now, this tank will accept waste and water. Now, the solids will stay in the tank and be broken down over time by bacteria. But the water that'll pass through the tank will now go out through a leach field. Now, a leach field is a series of pipes, perforated pipes, that sit below the substrate of the soil, and the water will trickle or drip down through the ground. Now, to determine if you can even have a septic system, it starts with a perk test. Brendan Zabricki's with the town of Essex. You've had your share of perk tests, right?
I sure have.
So what's a perk test?
Well, that stands for percolation test, and it's a field test to simulate how wastewater will travel down through the soil once a septic system is built on top of it.
How fast it'll pass through, sort of like water going down through the coffee grounds in a filter.
That's a good analogy, yes.
Right. Okay. So what have you done to get us to this point?
Well, previous to this, we dug several deep holes, about 10 feet down into the ground.
Okay.
That allowed us to get a look at the various soil layers that you're going to find whenever you dig here in New England.
All right, so this is topsoil. What are you seeing? What am I seeing?
Well, as you just mentioned, this is your topsoil. Then you go through a layer known as subsoil. You then finally get down to a layer that is really the glacial material. In other words, the glacier brought it in.
Yeah.
We have determined that this is the most restrictive or most limiting layer in the soil profile. And the septic system code requires that we actually perform the perk test in that most limiting
So
layer.
you're testing at almost the worst place.
The worst place that you're going to have underneath that system, that's
All right.
correct.
So that looks pretty dense right here, so not
That's
accept
right.
water too well.
That's exactly right. So what we did after that is, knowing what we had in the deep holes, we just had the machine dig down a shelf to the top of that most restrictive layer,
right.
and we're ready to dig a perk hole that's about 12 inches in diameter and about 18 inches deep.
Okay.
Then we're going to fill that hole with water and let the hole sit for a little while to make it saturated. That will be a great simulation of how soil will behave when it's wet underneath a leach facility. Then we will use a ruler to watch the rate at which the water drops down through the hole over time.
Yeah.
And that will give us what's called a perk rate, or percolation
So what
rate.
happens if the rate doesn't drop fast enough?
If it doesn't drop fast enough, that would be a limitation to the site that you may not be able to build a septic system in this
This
particular
is a pretty
location.
important test then.
It is very important. So now I'm just going to take this water, pour it into the hole against a board that I've already got set up.
What's the board do?
What this does is it puts the water into the hole more gently so that we do not stir up the fine material in there.
Yeah.
And we want to bring this water level up to about 12 inches, and we're going to maintain that level for about 15 minutes, again, to simulate saturated conditions in the soil.
Okay. Okay.
So we'll check that. We're about 9 so far, so we're going to need another bucket of water, Richard.
All right, Brennan, it has been 15 minutes.
We want to see the time it takes to go from 9 inches down to 6 inches. Well, it dropped down to 6 inches in about 27 minutes.
So is that good?
Yeah, I've seen quicker than that, but it's somewhere right in the middle.
But you're telling us that we passed the test, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for your help on the perk test.
Of course.
Thanks for watching. This Old House has got a video for just about every home improvement project, so be sure to check out the others. And if you like what you see, click on the subscribe.
That's a good test right there. That shows you how they actually will test the soil. Excuse me. So the subdivider, they seek out the raw land to see how they could profitably subdivide it. Then they determine if the proposed use is consistent with the local zoning laws. Then they locate financial backers. Look, so they often put a lot of money into this project before they even bought the land. So then they seek out local financial backers. So what do they do? How do they do this? Well, they're making offers they'll make an offer on the land that's subject to them getting approvals for the subdivision, subject to them getting the financing in place, subject to all the approvals from the local building departments. Okay, this is all part of the process and how they do it. Often they spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to prepare before they even purchase the land, just in the testing phase here. So they'll locate those financial backers, and then they'll initiate marketing strategies. Title to individual parcels is then transferred as lots are sold off using a blanket mortgage, which has a partial release clause in it that allows them to sell off smaller lots off of a larger one. Your local municipalities will usually, before they give the approval for the subdivision building plans, they'll charge an impact fee. So they'll negotiate some sort of an impact fee, which is paid to the municipality by a developer to help the community cope with that added demand on the city services for the police, fire, garbage, public works, water, sewage, school system, etc. So I kind of refer to them as the legal bribes that they charge, that they negotiate with the developer to pay. Sometimes it couldn't be money. Sometimes it could say, hey, you need to donate 5 police cars or a fire truck to the municipality, or a street sweeper, you know. So then, depending on the size, I guess, of the development. So the municipality can ask for a fire truck to be, well, this is what I just said here. Okay, so subdivision plans. By the way, this is the way that it's traditionally done. I've been seeing it done lately in a different way. Our politicians in our state have done some things that I quite haven't grasped yet. I'm trying to figure out how they're doing this, but there's a workaround. Instead of charging impact fees, I guess they get some kind of funding from the state or something. I'm not sure exactly how it gets done, but these developers are not being charged these fees, and they're getting tax breaks for years before at the beginning here of these projects. Is that going to pay off in the long run to the municipality if they're not getting anything out of it? Well, the mayor in our town is saying, "Oh yeah, we'll get an increase in tax dollars." Well, when? They're getting tax breaks for 10 years or more. They're not being charged these impact fees. So where exactly is the benefit? I don't know. Maybe it's just the corruption in my town and how they're doing it, because they're also not building the low-income housing or affordable housing. You know, they're building all these high rises all over the place, but yet there's not a single affordable housing unit in any of those buildings. Now the mayor's barking about how there's such an urgency that we need to be in line with the state's requirement for affordable housing suddenly, you know, as if it's a shock that he knew that he didn't know that the city has to comply and keep track with however many homes are being built. So many need to be affordable, low income and affordable housing. So I think it's just as being crooked. And what he's doing is being in bed with the developers. And I don't know. Maybe they're helping him election time with some kickbacks of money or, you know, support that way. However he is doing it, it ain't right. I'll tell you that, because they should be charging impact fees to these developers. And instead now he's going around town talking about something that the Democrat Party has been pushing since President Obama was president. They came up with this new idea that apparently, in case you didn't know, suburban neighborhoods, you know, with 1 and 2 family houses, apparently they're racist. You know, I think that that's a racist statement, that somebody's just trying to do race baiting, because they're saying that 1 and 2 family homes are racist. How is that? How exactly is that racist? Why are you trying to say that people of color can't buy a 1 or 2 family house? We got plenty of people of color around me in my neighborhood. We got a very diverse community here. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about, but he's using premise because it's the political party's agenda, or it was, but he doesn't want to let it die. He wants to use that idea now and adapt it for his current thing, even though they dropped it, I think, as a whole. Since the Trump's election, they want to. I think the National Party dropped that idea as a whole, but some local politicians are holding on to it. And they're saying that basically suburban communities with single and two family houses are racist, so that they could get apartment buildings and ignore zoning laws, and they could start putting apartment buildings in these areas by rezoning them and putting high rises in everywhere when they get in bed with the developers, you know. I think that doing that destroys these quaint communities where people, which that's the American goal, right? For everybody. I don't care what your race is, right? Isn't that the ultimate goal, to have a single family house? I mean, we could buy multi-family houses or two-family houses, but even when you're living in those, maybe as a starter home for you, that there's other rental units help pay for your mortgage. It isn't it, isn't the ultimate goal to have, isn't that the American dream, to get your own house with your own backyard where you could do anything you want? You don't got neighbors living above you, below you, on the side of you. You got your own house. You got your own, you could have your barbecues, you could have a swimming pool, you could do whatever the hell you want. It's your property. That's the same goal for everybody. I don't care what,
Everybody.
right? So this ridiculous race baiting argument that they're trying to push out there, that suburban communities are racist, is I think it's a bit of desperation, or it's just a tool that they're trying to use by playing, I guess, a race card. Doesn't really exist, in order to try to change the zoning regulations, so that now you got this mayor who's been in bed with all these developers building up all these high rises in my town. None of them have affordable or low income housing in there, and now he's being pushed. Hey, where's the affordable low income housing? Well, he doesn't want to get his developer buddies mad, so what he's going to do is he wants to change the zoning laws in these suburban communities to be able to put apartment buildings and those high rises for now low income and affordable housing in those areas. But then you're kind of destroying those neighborhoods that which are the ultimate American dream of having those single family houses, you know, and it's basically turning everything into an urban community. You know, so if you don't like suburbia, which people, they like to get out of the city a little bit. You know, it's nice to be in
Yeah.
close to the city, but you want a little separation from your neighbors, have a little privacy, you know.
Right.
But so in some towns like mine right now, this is what he's doing, and this is the plan. This is a plan that actually the whole party had as a whole, that they were going to do this around the United States. This is why you had BlackRock and Zillow and all of these conglomerates that were buying up entire neighborhoods of homes above market prices, because they were in anticipation of their zoning laws being changed so that they could put up these apartment buildings and high rises, and then they could reap the rewards of the rental of those rental units, and converting them to many rental units instead of a single family house. That's why they were overpaying for them. Okay. They were in bed with their politician buddies who were promising them that they were going to be changing these zoning laws. And then they dropped it like a hot potato. So now you got BlackRock and all of Zillow and all these other ones. Now they're just getting rid of these properties because their plan is not going to work out the way they planned. So
Daniel, do you know in Metro Park, you see the big building, they're making it right now. Metro Park Station. They are making
who you talking
the
to?
Metro Park.
Who you talking to, Daniela?
Sorry. Daniel, not Daniel.
Victor.
Victor. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Victor. I
Okay.
don't know why Daniel. Okay, sorry.
We're talking to her. Okay.
So at Metro Park Station, do you know that big building they are making it? It's apartments, right? Not apartment. It's a very good house.
Train station?
Yeah, train station.
Yeah, that's no, I think that's commercial buildings. I don't think that's residential buildings they're putting in.
Really? We heard that it's a good apartments.
That's right in the train station parking lot. You know, I know. I was there the other day. I had to pick my mother up coming back from Pennsylvania from the train station there, and I was like, "Whoa, when did they put this thing up?" I didn't even know.
Yeah.
This was like, what the hell is this? I used to work across the street at Engelhard, which is now BASF.
Do you see the New Brunswick downtown? New Brunswick. They change. They make a lot of big building over there.
They're popping up all over towns,
Yeah.
everywhere, everywhere. You see,
Everywhere, everywhere, right?
he is a big player in this, right? They're doing a lot of these construction. You know, Meridia is actually one guy. The guy is like a billionaire. You know, and you know, it's so I was like, what kind of organization is Meridia? And you know, I had somebody tell me that it's actually not an organization. It's actually one guy. He's just a billionaire, and he builds housing everywhere, and he makes all that money. That goes to him, his family. You know, that's
Wow.
that's that's a ridiculous amount of money because I'm seeing Meridia buildings popping up everywhere. I see them in Linden and Rahway and Roselle Park. They're all over around me. Woodbridge, everywhere they're coming up, you know. Um, so for one guy to be building all those buildings, sheesh, he must be paying off some serious bribes to the politicians in these towns to get the approvals left and right, and them not charging him impact fees.
Yep. They had an issues here in Bambrook
Yeah.
because they made Meridian, they make a building and they don't have no parking now. So all the small business they complaining because they losing business.
Yeah, there's no parking, no place to park the cars.
Yeah,
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 parking garages under those buildings.
yeah.
Yeah, put parking attached to them. I agree. I understand what you're saying 100%.
yeah. And
We're seeing that problem. That was one of the issues that I was running on. I was running for city council in my town, you know, but the dirty mayor, he ended up throwing in another candidate with his party. He threw another candidate in that's a member of his party, his political party, but he threw him in as an independent to siphon off votes for me, and he siphoned off enough votes that his guy won, you know. So, but I got the closest to winning this area than anybody has in the last 30 years, you know. But they pulled a typical political trick and they put a candidate in that they know has no chance of winning, but will siphon some votes off. But either way, I don't want to get into my political ventures here, but that was one of the issues was the parking and the traffic from
yeah.
these construction projects. And the mayor said, you know, his people, I talked to his people that were in charge of getting all these approvals for these things. And they were telling me, you know, they don't agree with it, but hey, that's their job. So this is what they do. And I was like, well, what the hell are you planning on doing with all the traffic as it is? It takes 45 minutes to go 3 blocks to get to Route 1 from St. George Avenue now, you know, at any given time during the day. And they're like, oh, well, we'll handle that. I was like, well, how do you plan on handling that? What are you going to do? Take all the properties by eminent domain and widen the road? He said, no. We're just going to make everything a one-way street. So you're going to make it like Newark, right? Everything is a one-way road. You're going to convert all the streets to one-way roads. So it's like that's a horrible idea. They're not planning these things out well. That's for sure. Okay, so anyway, let's finish this chapter up. Okay, so the subdivider, we already went over this, the impact fees. All right, we already went over that. All right, so now let's go to page 341 and here where they talk about, you know, that the plans are, you know, how the subdivision process works. They get the approvals sought from the local officials, permanent financing, and all that stuff. And then they use a blanket mortgage with a partial release clause. You got to write that in there because it's not in the book. So let me put that in as a suggestion to write underneath that. So that's
Mhm.
page 341. Because they're explaining it right here. You might as well throw in there what kind of mortgage loan they're using, make it a complete story, right?
Mhm.
Get those highlights if you could.
services.
Yeah, I got plenty of suggestions. I got 3 pages already of suggestions just during taking this class, taking a couple of notes on top of ones I already had for modifications to this book. All right.
This book has 2 more lines. You want me to read it? Next to other services, the first paragraph that we did highlighted. Those funds will,
On the page 341? What are you talking?
yeah, there are 2 more lines. Those funds will go to the community to help offset the cost of increased demand on those community service by the influx
Oh,
of
okay.
a
You're talking
large number of people moving in.
So you're talking about after impact fees here. Yeah, they did add
Yes,
another
yes.
that says right under impact fees that says those funds will go to the community to help offset the cost of increased demand in those community services by the influx of the large number of
Mhm.
people that are moving in. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So what are you telling me? It's time for me to take a new screenshot and update it just before
No,
the book?
I'm just letting you know.
I know. Well, I'm gonna do that anyway, so because you pointed that out there, so I'm gonna do that anyway. Get a straight picture. All right. You guys got the highlights and notes here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Most subdivisions are laid out by use of lot and block numbers. An area of land is designated as a block, and the area making up the block is divided into individual lots, and both are numbered consecutively. I showed you pictures of tax maps already in the municipality that showed lot and block numbers already in a previous chapter. Maybe I'll have it in this chapter too. I'm not sure. We'll take a look. So that blanket mortgage has that partial release clause in there that allows the developer to sell off a smaller lot off of the larger one without having to pay back the loan in full at that time, only pay back a portion of the loan. Because most loans have that alienation clause known as a due on sale clause that when you transfer the ownership, the loan needs to be repaid in full. But the blanket mortgage has a partial release clause that allows you to not have to pay back the full loan, but only a part of the loan as you sell off a part of that larger lot until the whole thing is sold off and paid off. So here's the example, like if they subdivide this piece of land into 6 different properties, 6 different parcels, they sell off one of them, well, the developer needs to pay off 1/6 of the loan. And they sell off another one, well, then they pay off 2/6 of the loan, and so on and so forth until it's all paid back. Give you a little visual. Okay, yeah, good. Okay, I put these maps now. I integrated them into the slideshow here. Okay, I didn't integrate them into that earlier chapter slide. I knew I had them in slides somewhere. Okay, I guess it was in this chapter. Here you could actually see from this is from my town, section of my town here. You could see the big boxes here with the numbers in them in bold. Those are the block numbers. And each block has consecutively numbered lots. So let's see if we can find a full block here. No, not in here.
Like for example, 334. That has 4 houses.
Yeah, so over here we can see block number 3. Is that 334? Yeah, 334.
Yeah, in the middle. Yeah.
334. That's block number 334. You have so that's block 334. This is lot number 1, block 334. Lot number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.01, 7.02, 8.01, 8.02, and it goes all the way down around, and then it comes back up 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So there's about 23, maybe a little bit more because you got 7.01, 7.02. So it's about 23, 25, 26, 27. Provided no other lots are split down below. You got 27 lots on block number 334.
How did you count?
You see, you got lot number 1, 2, 3, 4. You see how it wraps all the way around?
Yeah.
Back around to lot number 23. But you over here,
Oh,
it goes from 6 to 7.01 and 7.02. Then it goes to 8.01 and 8.02.
oh,
Because apparently these lots were subdivided at some point. So they're actually two separate lots. Either that or they were bought by one person and combined. Okay. So that's how these lot and block numbers work. It's basically little mini subdivisions added onto each other. You take a bunch of these little maps and these are little subdivisions. If you attach them to each other, pretty soon you got the city's tax map. And
so
that's
334, that's a lot. The lot has these 27 houses.
a block number. Like a city.
Block, sorry,
Yeah.
block.
There's many lots on a block, or there's many.
Okay.
So the block number is in a big bold, and then each individual number is numbered consecutively here. And so
Got it.
are split. It could be like you have an additional lot. It's not just lot number 7, it's 7.01, and then you got 7.02, so that's a good example of how they get split up too. All right. So here's that tax map. Again, we zoomed in on block number 335 over here. Here's lot number 5. Okay. That's how you could locate a property. So block 335, lot number 5, that's this one. So what do we call this number lot? Is this lot right here where the road splits? That's block 336, lot number 1. And you can see over here, there's also, they got measured out, the distance from the property line here to here. It's too small for me to zoom in on and read from.
Right.
But there's sizes over here. Okay. All right. Now the developer also needs to determine what kind of street patterns they're going to do. Are they going to go with the classic gridiron blocks which look like ice makers? Those old ice makers. Or you got the curvilinear pattern. So here you got just straight roads and streets around the blocks. Or are they going to go with a curvilinear pattern or some other pattern? There's many different types of patterns for the developer to figure out how they're going to lay out the land. That's for the streets. But what about the properties, the individual properties? They could go with a conventional garden estate style where people will have larger properties. Or they could go with the clustered estates where people will have smaller properties clustered together closer, but it'll give more open space and parkland. So both of these examples here, we got the conventional garden estate on the left and the clustered estates on the right. They both have approximately the same amount of housing. On the left, it's 368 housing units and 366 housing units on the right. But there's 1.6 acres of parkland here. You see the open spaces for parkland here and there. And people have bigger yards and properties. Whereas over here, where they got smaller yards and more open space and parkland, you got 23.5 acres of parkland and open space. I don't know. I like to have a big backyard. Kind of like this size better than the clustered estates, personally. All right. Here's an example of a small subdivision where you could see the outline of this one lot is in black. You guys see that? That's one lot, and here's the street. And this owner of this lot then subdivided it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 separate properties that they built houses on. And they built their own street over here. They built the cul-de-sac street. You see that? This is the street, and they get to name that street if they want. Now, if they need to put down, when they submit these plans for approval from the city, they got to put down whether this street is going to be dedicated or if it's going to remain private. What is dedication? When you give land to the government for a public use, like streets, schools, or parks. So is this road going to be remaining private on your own land? But that doesn't make sense to do here, because this guy is going to build 6, 8 houses and sell them all. Why would you want to keep the street private that you need to maintain now? You'd be better off dedicating it to the municipality. So they got to repave it and do the snow removal and all that. So a plat, what is a plat? We're going to highlight the definition. A plat is a map of a subdivision indicating the location and boundaries of each individual properties. Also, it's also considered a legal description of land. Right? Plat of a subdivision. See, they do this often. It looks like the words are run on because they change the fonts and everything next to each other instead of giving it a little extra space in there. Yeah. Whoever does the formatting of the books, they don't do a good job. Everybody got this? Everybody find where this is?
Yeah.
Page 342. No. So land planning, part of the land planning of a subdivision. Let's see, you got covenants and restrictions. Oh, remember this stuff? We're doing a little recap from the old chapters 6, I believe it was. Covenants and restrictions. Restrictions that are placed in deeds by private parties, not by governments. So these restrictions are called restrictive covenants. A covenant is a legal promise. These happen to be restrictive legal promises that the buyer is going to abide by. So these are placed in deeds by the owner, which could be the subdivider at the time. Those private parties, not by the government, which the government has its own powers. So what kind of estate and land is based on a restriction? Fee determinable, defeasible, or a conditional fee estate. We went over them in chapter 6, page 104. A moratorium, did we have that one once before? We may have had that term once before, but now we're seeing it used in this chapter. A moratorium is a halt to further development in an area. It's important for a developer to, once they get all the approvals for their permits and for the construction, that they record those permits, those approvals for the subdivision in the public records. In the event that there's a moratorium, they can continue their project and they can move forward with their construction project. Because the moratorium is a halt to any further development in the area. So if they did not get their approvals for their construction added to the recorded in the public record, then even though they got the approvals, they cannot start their construction. There's a halt to all development in the area. But if they did record those approvals, even if they call a moratorium, they can move forward with their plans because they recorded those approvals already. So I had an issue one time with one of my students in a broker's class. He was telling me how he's dealing with this guy who's a developer who he bought this large piece of land that he was going to be developing on, and he was going to make a ton of money. But the guy borrowed money from unconventional sources, people that you really don't want to owe money to. And he said that during that time, this was during one of the Obama presidencies. He did something with the environment, he had his EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, made some changes, and those changes put a halt to any development, put a moratorium to any development in certain areas. Okay. I'm not sure what the exact environmental regulation was on that, but it was affecting this developer to the point that he could not, first of all, he couldn't continue with his construction if those permits were not all of his approvals for the construction were not recorded yet. And since the EPA was making some changes saying that you cannot build within this distance of waterways, of certain kinds of trees, and all kinds of like nonsense, stuff like that, but it has a real impact. And this developer said that now he wasn't going to be able to build on half the land that he bought because of these new environmental regulations, even though he got all the approvals for it already, because him or his attorney or whoever was responsible never recorded the approvals before the EPA called that moratorium. So the agent in my class, he's like, Victor, what do I do? It's like, look, this guy keeps calling me nonstop during the class. It's like, well, shut your phone off. He's like, no, but he's a developer. He's going to be doing all these developments, and I was going to get the listings on them. And now he's telling me that he can't build on half the land because the EPA is doing all these restrictions now. They called a moratorium. They didn't record their approvals, so now he can't get permits to build on half of the property now. He's not going to be able to get enough money to pay back what he borrowed, and he borrowed money from people you don't want to owe money to, and he's over here rubbing his nose like that, saying it's like the mob or something that he borrowed money from. And he's like, this guy, he's like talking about killing himself now. And I was like, all right, I don't want to be involved in this conversation anymore. I was like, yeah, I would suggest you separate yourself from it too. I told him, I was like, listen, somebody's going to be responsible. So why was it not recorded? If he got the approvals, why were they not recorded? And whose job was it to record them? If it was an attorney, maybe you could sue that attorney's insurance, maybe to get somewhere satisfaction. I don't know. Or I don't know what to tell you, but I'm not getting involved with a 10-foot pole, not in that kind of situation. Sorry. But FHA has minimum standards for new construction materials and occupancy, which must be a majority of owner occupants if the complex is going to be allowing financing from the FHA for the buyers. The construction has to be up to certain minimum construction standards that the FHA requires, and the majority of the units need to be sold to owner occupants. Otherwise, the FHA won't allow FHA loans to buy units in certain complexes. I actually had this happen to me one time. It was a complex on a waterfront in Perth Amboy of new construction, and the one property that was the one unit that was for sale actually was a foreclosure. And it was new construction, so the guy got foreclosed on before he was even able to live in the thing. It was new construction, and so I had this lady contacting me that her son was interested in purchasing the property, and she wanted me to set up an appointment where I could show them the unit and everything. And I was like, yeah, okay, no problem. I was like, is he pre-approved for a mortgage yet or pre-qualified? And they're like, yeah, we got the paperwork. I was like, okay. Make sure that your son brings the paperwork. I'll set up the appointment to meet him. Okay. And then when I go there, the son's not even there. It's like this lady, which is his mother, her sister, like all these extended family members and all their kids, but the guy who's supposed to be purchasing, apparently he's not even coming to look at the house. Apparently the shopping for him. It's like, yeah, okay, that's very mature. I get this a lot also in these real estate classes where you get these helicopter parents where they're like, yes, my son is signing up for the class. And I'm like, okay, well, how come he's not calling me? Why are you calling? I'm like, if he wants to be involved in the real estate business, he needs to have more, he needs to be a little more assertive, and he's just busy with his schedule, this and that. But it ends up that the parent is involved the whole time from, okay, picking up the book, arranging for the class. What about his hours in the class and everything? I'm like, listen, I don't want to talk to you no more. I want to talk to your child. They're an adult. They're the ones that are signing up for this class. I want to deal with them, not you. Okay. Because you get these overprotective parents that they're nothing but a major pain in my ass. Okay. These types of children that turn to adults are totally irresponsible. They can't even take accounting for their own actions. Look, this class requires you be present, you be active in class, not just show up or sign on in a video and then never participate in the class or do any studies or anything like that. People that do this, you're never going to pass the exam. You're never going to get anywhere. But then you're going to end up blaming me as the reason for you not passing. So when these parents start signing up kids like this, I could see where it's going already. It's the same thing that happened here with this person. Now, I met this lady and all this extended family except the guy who's supposed to be purchasing it, and I'm showing them the place. They're like loving it. They're like, okay, we'd like to put it in an offer. I was like, are you buying it or is your son buying it? And they said, well, my son is buying it, but I'm like, but where's your son? Isn't he going to look at the property before he buys it? I was like, I need to meet with your son, not you. I need to meet with your son and he needs to take a look at it and he needs to sign the contract. I can't have you signing a contract on behalf of your son when you get to forge his signature too. I was like, do you have his mortgage pre-approval letter that we discussed? And so she gave me the mortgage pre-qualification letter and it was for an FHA loan. And I was like, you can't buy in here with that. And they're like, what do you mean? The property is FHA approved. I don't know. She's like, what do you mean? He's got an approval for an FHA loan. Look, he could get the loan. I'm like, yeah, but you can't use that to buy in here. She's like, you can't discriminate against us. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Who said anything about discrimination? I said, you cannot use an FHA loan to buy in here. This complex is not FHA approved. It says right in the listing. First of all, this is not my listing. I'm the buyer's agent for her son, who now is never showing up. I spoke to the guy one time. Ever since, I've been dealing with his mom. So I was like, you have to use a different type of financing to get in here. But he's been FHA approved. That's good. We could get the loan from them. But the complex is not FHA approved. Like, she couldn't get it through her head how the financing works and how you can't use certain financing in certain real estate if the construction wasn't up to a certain standard, or maybe it was because the majority of the units are non-owner occupied. So you can't use an FHA loan to buy in it because the complex is not approved by the FHA. It's not me that's discriminating against you. It's the FHA does not allow loans in certain situations to use their loans to buy the real estate. And this was some lady who apparently race was like on the top of her mind because I'm a white guy, they were black, and so she's like, you're discriminating against me. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with discrimination. I'd love to sell you a place. I'd love to make money off of it. You just got to use a different type of loan. The FHA loan, this complex is not approved for the FHA. So the FHA will not give your son a loan to buy in this complex. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's not me discriminating. And they were just yelling about discrimination. So I was like, you know what? You're not even the buyers. Everybody get the heck out of here. That's how I spoke to them. I said, everybody get out. You know, because there's about 10 of them, between sisters and cousins, and then all their children,
Wow.
like they weren't even paying attention to them. They're all really around and screaming. I was like, listen, I'm gonna get the hell out of here. Now, you got this person who's accusing me of being racist because I told them that they can't use an FHA loan to buy in a complex that's not FHA approved, which it says right in the listing. And so, some people, this is the mentality of some people you got to deal with, though. And so it was like herding cats to get them the hell out of there. I got them out of there. I locked the door. It was like, doors locked. It's
That's true.
good,
I know.
And I was like, if your son's interested in purchasing this thing, I could guide him through it. Have him call me. I don't want to deal with you, And of course, her son never called, and I don't know what the hell if he ever ended up buying anything. But yeah, helicopter parents.
Okay.
That's the kind of kids you raise. That's probably why he didn't want to show up. He was probably embarrassed of his parents and their the family of how they were going to act. So, but. Why didn't get why weren't they able to get the loan? Because the complex is not FHA approved. Remember I showed you guys in a previous chapter, you got to go to the HUD website and you could see condo complexes that are FHA approved, right? This was not one of them. It was not FHA approved. So you can't use an FHA loan to buy in there unless you get the complex FHA approved, but that was not going to happen. Now, it was right in the listing that the complex is not FHA approved and it cannot be FHA approved. I'm guessing it's either the construction materials that were used, but it actually looked like a really nice place. So I doubt it was the construction materials. I think it was because there were majority renter occupied units. So the FHA will not give a loan for those types of complexes because they know the values on them are going to come down because renters don't care for the property as well as owner occupants. So the development costs, there's an interesting factoid for development. The development cost is estimated to be 4 to 6 times the cost of the raw land to develop a subdivision. All right. Now, where does that money go? Well, it goes towards the attorneys, it goes towards the subdivider, all the permitting, engineering, the mass works, testing, environmental testing, the realtors commissions, the actual construction of the buildings and the roads and everything. So it's estimated to cost 4 to 6 times the cost of the raw land. So density zoning. If something is dense, that means it's packed in tight, right? So density zoning is zoning that restricts the maximum number of homes that can be built per acre, or zoning for the most homes that can be built per acre. We already learned about this term in an earlier chapter as well. So look at this. We got restrictive covenants, the states and land that allow to have restrictions in the deeds, which we went over in earlier chapters. The moratorium we went over in an earlier chapter, but now we're seeing it first implemented here. A moratorium is a halt to further development in an area. And then density zoning is zoning that restricts the maximum number of homes that can be built per acre. Or another way of saying that is zoning for the most homes that can be built per acre. Okay, 2 ways of saying the same thing. And so remember, here's those links for the FHA loan limits by county. And then we have the FHA approved condos. So that database, that we were looking up, I showed this to you guys once before. It takes you to the HUD website for condominiums. So these are people using FHA loans. So let's look at the condos by New Jersey. And then the city was Perth Amboy. Perth Amboy. So we could see all the complexes that are FHA approved or not. I don't remember what that complex was named though, but it was on the waterfront. It's not this one because this one's FHA approved. But you see some are expired, approved, expired. This one was approved 2023, it's going to expire in 2026, and then it's going to come up for renewal. So 2026 is going to be its 20-year anniversary there. Withdrawn, rejected, approved, expired. All right. All right, so let's take a look now. Let's highlight dedication or dedicated means that all areas that have been set aside for street purposes are to be dedicated or turned over to the municipality. So dedication, or to dedicate land, means to turn it over, to give ownership of the land to the municipality for the purpose of streets, schools, and parks. And then here we can highlight what a moratorium is. It's a halt to further development in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And next to covenants and restrictions, you could write there next to the title, restrictive covenants are placed in deeds by private parties, not by governments. Chapter 6, page 104 is where we went over that stuff.
Writing it down, okay.
You have to write all this in there. This is all in chapter 6. You know, estates in land that are based on restrictions are called fee determinable, defeasible fee, or conditional fee estates. And we went over those on chapter 6 on page 104. So the only thing I wanted you to write here is restrictive covenants are placed in deeds by private parties, not by government. Governments have their own powers of how they could restrict how you use your property through zoning and building ordinances and all kinds of stuff like that. But just let me know when you guys have all those notes in.
Estate in land bed. Can we write it down, that one, or skip?
I'm sorry? No, you don't have to write all this because this is stuff is in chapter 4. If you want to, you can. Hey, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
You got the reference here to look at chapter 6, which talks about estates based on restrictions are called whatever, you know, so you don't have to write it again in each and every chapter.
So when the municipality declare the moratorium, you cannot build anymore.
Well, whoever it is that declared it, whether it's the municipality, the state, or federal government, yeah, when a moratorium is called, what is a moratorium? It's a halt to any further development in the area. So the only time you could develop is if you recorded all of your approvals. If you didn't do that, then even if you got the approvals for your construction, if you didn't record those approvals in the public records where the land is located, or in the county where the land is located, you cannot, you can't even start your construction project.
So what happened with your investment, with your money? So they give you back, or you lose the money?
Who gives you back? No, you're screwed. You should have recorded your approvals. Otherwise, you need to wait until the moratorium is lifted, if it's lifted.
Wow.
That one example with that guy in my class, the developer he was working with, he said that they got all the approvals for the construction, but they didn't record them, and the EP changing the rules so that they wouldn't be able to develop on half of the land that he had. So there'd be no way for him to get all of his money back then. So he would have to scrap that project. But the only problem is he already used a lot of that money to start getting all the approvals and all the permits and all the legal stuff. So a lot of that money was already being used, and he borrowed the money from a source, like I was told, that you do not want to owe money to these people. He didn't go to a bank to get it. Let's just say that. So this guy was scared.
Hmm.
All right, just let me know when everybody's got all those notes.
Yeah, it's done.
Yeah, done.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to add somebody to the exam test system.
Oh,
I could do it remotely through my cell phone really quick, so I'm just trying to do that real quick for them.
oh, somebody's taking exams?
Yeah, somebody from another class. So okay, I added them to that database. Remember, I told you I got to add you to a third-party database that
Right.
that hosts and manages the exam software that then gets funneled into our website. So I had to go to that website and enter the information of the students so that now they're in the database. They can take the exam whenever they want now. Okay, so okay, continuing page 344, some more highlights. For the development costs, see, factoid not on exam. Never mind, you don't need to highlight any of this stuff right here. But down here with the density zoning, you do, okay? Density zoning ordinances restrict the average maximum number of houses that may be built per acre within a particular subdivision. Or another way to say that is density zoning is zoning for the maximum amount of homes that can be built per acre. Instead of saying it's a restriction, you're saying it's for the maximum homes. So this is up here is just a blurb about, that the development will cost about 4 to 6 times the cost of the raw land. And that includes the, let's see, the sale price reflects the expensive cost of the loan, installation of sewers and septic systems, water mains or wells, storm drains, landscaping, street lights, earthworks, the mass dirt removal, site grading, and similar operations, paving, engineering, and surveying fees. Yeah, you got the surveyors you got to pay. Brokers' commissions, that's us. Inspections, bonding costs, filing and legal fees, sale costs, and other overhead. In certain areas, a subdivider may also be required to give financial assistance to districts or park districts. That's that impact fees that they would have to pay, or in a form of a fixed subsidy or provisions per subdivided lot. So this should first, let's see, should such further costs be incurred, they must, of course, be added to the cost of each individual property.
Oh, I forgot to drink water.
So New Jersey environmental issues, problems with past use of lands could lead to soil contamination. So future buyers may face liability for the cleanup under CERCLA. You guys remember that? The Superfund sites and CERCLA holds landowners responsible for any contamination on their own properties.
Something like
Because of that, an EIS, you need to know this, EIS is an environmental impact study. These reports have an impact on the project. They're required before any federal project that affect the quality of life, such as contamination. It requires info about planned project and possible solutions, what the environmental impact is. So they check for contamination, but also for things like, is there some sort of a rare species of animal or insect or fish or something that's on this property? That could affect your project when the environmental agencies get involved. How's it going to affect the traffic and drainage issues? If human remains are found on the property, that's definitely going to put a halt to your project, at least temporarily, right? They need to find out, is this a crime scene? Was that a recent murder and the body was buried here? Or is this something of a historic significance? Is this a historic find? You know, New Jersey's the third state admitted to the nation, admitted to the United States, the Union. We're one of the 13 original colonies. We're the third colony added to the United States, what came to be known as the United States. There's a lot of battles that were fought here and there, and human remains may be found because maybe there was a battle that was fought here, and more research needs to be done by the Historic Society. But first, we need to get the coroner out here. So we call the police, put a halt to it, get the coroner out here. Hey, we found a body, we found human remains. If it was a murder, they do their investigation, they take their pictures, remove that stuff, and then the project can move forward. But if it's shown that there's some sort of a historic significance to this, that these are old remains that have been here for a long time, that could kill your project altogether. It could just maybe be a temporary thing, but it could also be put an end to your construction project here if this land is of historic significance. Look, something like that even happened at the World Trade Centers. Remember when the World Trade Centers were taken down by the terrorists, the airplanes into the Trade Center? Did you know that after they did all the cleanup and they were building the Freedom Tower in its place, did you know what they found underneath that location? They found an old ship.
Oh, really?
Buried under where the World Trade Center stood. Yeah, because the World Trade Centers, they had levels of parking garages beneath the World Trade Center.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty deep. And then the trade centers were built above that. So you had the parking beneath it, right? And beneath that is where they found, because the Freedom Tower is going to be much taller than the trade centers were, right? So they needed to dig the foundation even deeper. And when they did that, that's when they came across this discovery of a ship. An old ship was found. Yeah.
Wow.
I got a link to it. You guys can search on, there's whole shows and documentaries put up about this on I forget if it was Discovery Channel or if it was, what's that other one that does all those documentaries? I don't know. There was it was either Discovery Channel or one of those other channels where you could just search for World Trade Center ship found under World Trade Center. You could start finding. Oh wait, actually, I have it in the ClassLinks Word document. I have a link about that.
Oh, that really?
Yeah. So if I open that up, I'll show you. I'm going to show you this video too, but check this out. Let's see, the WTC, let's see, World Trade Center building. There we go. Where they found that ship underneath it. Okay, so here's that video that I'm about to show you now. Well, where was it? Let me look up movies. There we go. Movies, documentaries, etc. Okay. Where do I have it? Oh, I thought I had a couple of those videos here. Maybe not. I guess I got to add them. Okay, so there's a couple of documentaries. I do have the links somewhere. I just need to add them here. I'll add them to this Word document. If you wanted to watch them later, you can. I'm not going to do it right now, but we'll go back to the slideshow and watch this video.
Plymouth Rock, I
Yeah. Unfortunately, we gotta listen to this.
never wonder if I'm covered for home and auto.
More savings.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty significant find. It's the kind of thing that archaeologists are always hoping to find in landfill deposits. It's a ship. It was probably put here around in the early 1800s. We know that this area, this whole block, was filled in between about 1790s and the 1830s. So we figure the ship probably predates that and was used as part of the landfilling process. So they filled the ship with dirt and rocks, and in conjunction with timber cribbing features or landfill retaining structures on either side, sunk them to the bottom of the river and used it to create new land along the waterfront. At this point, we really don't know much. So we kind of just have to continue our analysis, see what what's under the boat, what's in the dirt around it, and see if that can tell us anything. We're assuming it was placed here in the early 1800s based on historic maps and how they show us how the shoreline progressed. Basically, they would just sink it little by little and gradually extend the shoreline, and usually build new wharves and piers out into the river, leaving a slip in between so boats could continue to sail in and out. And then as waterfront land became more and more valuable and more necessary, they would continue filling in and extending the shoreline gradually. And it's tied into commerce and trade of the early 19th century. There have been ships found in the city before. There was a famous one on Water Street found in the early 1980s. And it's the kind of thing that everyone always hopes to find. It's an exciting find. It's a big find. It's something that's interesting. We can get a lot of information about it. It's a very unique part of history that, we wouldn't have access to otherwise.
That's pretty interesting, huh? An old pirate ship found underneath the World Trade Centers. Look at that, Now, it wasn't a pirate ship. It was probably an old ship that was taken out of service, like she said, filled with rocks and dirt and stuff, and then sunk to build the shoreline. But that just shows you how most of Manhattan is man-made. New York City is a narrow peninsula surrounded by water on three sides, and they built it out. Where the World Trade Center stood used to be the shoreline where the water was, and they built it out from there, building all that land. I mean, how far away from the actual water is the World Trade Center? It's blocks and blocks and blocks away, right? Those big New York City blocks away. That all used to be water that they man-made, build it into a wider land. That's man-made land. And this is how they did it. They sunk ships. They filled them with dirt and rocks and gravel. And then they built that dirt up on top of it. And then over the years, they built and built out. So a lot of that buildings that are standing there, a lot of those skyscrapers and high rises, that's all built on man-made land. Imagine that being done in the 17 and 1800s, 1900s even. So actually they carbon dated the wood on this, and the wood came from the same place where the Philadelphia Liberty Bell was, where the wood for the bell, where they got that from. So it actually dated back to the 1700s.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can look it up online, but I'll find those videos that I do have for them, and I'll add them to the Word document. So if you're interested, they'll be there in that ClassLinks Word document. I'm going to put them in that ClassLinks Word document right under here where it says documentary about ship discovered under the World Trade Centers. Okay, so I'll add those additional videos where you guys can learn more about it there. It was History Channel, the Discovery Channel, and something else I forget. But there was some long documentaries, and they even show you some things. They found jewelry, they found pottery, they found all kinds of other stuff, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so moving along. So that all falls under EIS, yeah.
Did they take it out?
Yeah, oh, yeah. They dug it out. They removed all of that. They dug out underneath it and around it, and that's where they found some of the jewelry. They found like old, pots and pans and dishes and forks.
Wow.
weapons and things of that nature. And they got them on display somewhere now in a museum.
Wow.
So, but that's pretty interesting find, seeing as it was sitting underneath a skyscraper for years and years
Wow.
and years. Right? But that just goes to show you, how real estate can be affected.
Very interesting.
Right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, these are interesting factoids, right? I'm
Mhm.
full of this information like that.
Yeah, that's nice.
The federal agencies, let's highlight, are required to conduct studies called environmental impact studies, or EIS, for any federal project that could affect the quality of life, especially projects located in floodplains, wetlands, steep slopes, and other environmentally fragile areas. Okay. This is to prevent you from buying real estate. You buy a new house on land. It looks beautiful, nice green lawn, beautiful yard, fence, modern homes. Only later find out that it was built on a toxic waste dump site
Mm.
or an old garbage dump. You're responsible for any contamination that's on your property, right? So, in the past, builders built on old contaminated farmland or other waste sites like that. You guys here familiar with Clark? You guys know the Clark Shopping Center, and then there's the golf course across the street from it. You got that.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah.
You got the Whole Foods over there and stuff, and then across the street you got the golf course and some restaurants and the golf club over there. You guys know where I'm talking about, that area?
In Clark?
Yeah, the Clark Shopping Center.
This side, I
Mhm.
think.
Well, the golf course stands and where the Whole Foods is in Clark.
Oh,
Those are two separate properties separated by the street. Where the golf course is, I remember when I was a kid, my dad read a newspaper article to me because he was chuckling because there were still buildings over there. And he was reading it about that. Can you imagine land being so contaminated with toxic waste? It said that nothing can be built there for 1,000 years.
oh,
But today there's a golf course there and a Whole Foods across the street and many restaurants. But that ground was so contaminated, it said, the newspaper article said, I remember my dad reading it to me. It said the ground was so contaminated that nothing can be built there for 1,000 years. But now they got restaurants, a golf course, how is that possible?
because we don't have space in New Jersey, so they're just making it.
Did somebody get the right payoff to the environmental agency that they got the approval? Well, here's a little interesting factoid. That ground where the golf course sits that was so contaminated, on that side it was more contaminated than the other side of the street, but the other side of the street was a contaminated site too.
Right.
But the factory, I forget what was there, where that ground was so contaminated, where the golf course currently sits with the restaurants over there. If you remove 6 feet of the topsoil and you replace it with clean soil, then you could do your construction project. Apparently that's what they did, because the soil beneath it, way deeper than 6 feet, is contaminated too. So all they did, they removed the top 6 feet of soil and they replaced it with 6 feet of clean soil versus the contaminated soil. So they removed 6 feet of contaminated soil and they replaced that whole land with 6 feet of clean soil. Now, if you look carefully, if you ever get out of your car, if you look from across the street, or if you're walking over there on that sidewalk where the golf course is, there are pipes that are sticking out of the ground. They got little signs on them. They're actually vent pipes for any contaminants in the ground to vent out into the atmosphere as they break down or whatever. There's EPA monitoring stations there for the contamination. And if you look at the fence, there's that wrought iron fence, the whole block around the golf course. At the corners of that fence on the property by the light, it's hard when you're driving by to see it. You really either need to be stopped at that light and know to look for it, or just be walk over there and look at it. They have the smallest super fun sign I've ever seen in my life on those fences. The sign is about this big. You know, it's smaller than the size of a piece of paper. Your typical piece of paper. You know, it's maybe about half that size. It's like 6 by 9, and it's a metal sign that's attached to the wrought iron fence at each of the corners, saying that this is a Superfund contaminated site.
Wow.
Interesting. A lot of people pay attention to this stuff. People drive by every day, maybe on the golf course, golfing, maybe dining in the restaurants. That land is contaminated.
Even if they dig that 6 feet still?
Well, underneath 6 feet, below 6 feet, you got contaminated soil. Now, if that land sits there for a while, isn't some of that contamination going to seep up into the clean soil?
No, yeah, of course it's gonna be.
But I don't know how they're handling that with the vent pipes and the monitoring stations and all that, but I don't think they're doing much about it right now. That's not a high priority because it looks nice and people are used to it now. It's not an issue.
And they got the approval. They got the approval.
Until somebody starts catching cancer or something because of that. Look, here's another site, not Island. It's one of the train, Avenel. Avenel Street in Avenel? You know where the train station is in Avenel? Okay, on Avenel Street. You go underneath that railroad bridge, okay, and then you come up on the left-hand side. That's all brand houses and condominiums over there. Talking about they're all brand. That entire site, they used to make nuclear submarines there. That entire site is contaminated.
Oh.
General Dynamics was the company that was there. General Dynamics makes the nuclear submarines. And so that was a top security site. There was armed guards all over that property. I know because when I was a kid, my cousin had the landscaping contract to do the landscaping there, and I worked with him. So we used to go there, go through the security and everything, and we were the landscapers. So we were able to get our security badges to go in there and do the landscaping, but this was a high security area. But when they eventually shut down and they tore down all of that and they removed all like in the back there, you saw like giant submarine propellers and transmissions and all kinds of stuff. There was all kinds of like oil and grease and other kinds of contaminations on that land. And that was a big issue. Now, they didn't clean it all up. They covered a lot of it up and then turned it into construction. So now when people own a house there, you own a house on an old contaminated land site. Was that ever disclosed to the buyers? I don't know. I never sold there. They got failures, they got restaurants there, all kinds of stuff like that. Okay, so the EIS, before any construction project can get done, especially if it's a federally involved, or what is it? Federal agencies are required, if it's any kind of a federal project or federally monitored project or what have you, you got to have an EIS study done. So you see that the ground is not contaminated and it's not going to affect the environment of any species of animals or anything. If you got a construction project and then all of a sudden during the construction project you got an owl that decides it's going to start nesting in one of the trees, and it starts having it lays its eggs and has those babies, and you find out that this is a endangered species of owl that is now taking up, they're reproducing in the trees on this site. You're not doing any construction there anymore because of the environment. impact. Okay. So New Jersey's, before any construction can take place in environmentally sensitive areas, you have to first get permission from the DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection Agency, which regulates these areas. Now, what gives them the authority to regulate these areas? We discussed this in a previous chapter too. What gives the DEP the authority to regulate construction in the wetlands area of the state? Well, it's the Wetlands Protection Act of 1970. In the highlands, it's the Highlands Water Protection Act. In the Pinelands, it's the Pinelands Protection Act. Coastal areas, it's the Coastal Area Facility Review Act, or CAFRA. And then they have the Waterfront Development Act. So they have this guide that builders should consult. You don't just need to get permission from the local building department in that municipality. You also need to get permission from the state's environmental agency, the DEP, the New Jersey DEP, if it's in certain areas that they're authorized to regulate. And if it's in a section of town that's deemed a historic district, you also need to get permission from the local historic society. So it gets involved, okay? So there's this guide called Before You Buy, Before You Build, or Buy Bob. Before you buy, before you build.
BBU.
Right before you build.
Yeah, so that's what they call it. Anyway, it basically says you need to consult because the DEP, you need to get permission in certain areas. Now, during the Obama presidency, once again, I keep referring back to the Obama presidency because he gave all kinds of wide sweeping powers to the EPA, which is a federal agency. But the federal agency passes it on to local state agencies as well, their authorities and enforcement activities. He gave it to the DEP in New Jersey, where they regulate all kinds of areas now that they previously did not. Did you know if you have a farm and on that farm you have a ditch because, you know, all your tractors and stuff keep going over a certain area, so it wears down the dirt on the road on your own private property. It wore down the road a bit so that when it rains, water sits there, there's a big old puddle now. Do you know, depending on the size and the depth of the puddle, it could be deemed that is regulated by the DEP. And they could regulate any construction that you do on your own land now because of a puddle. This is how warped they got trying to give so much additional powers to these environmental agencies. You know, I don't have a thing against our environment. You know, I love clean air. I don't want contamination, you know, but
Of course.
you got to be realistic with some of this nonsense. You know, they gave these wide sweeping authorities of these environmental agencies to regulate farmland like this. I could spend hours showing you videos I have of lawsuits from property owners against the EPA under the Obama administration. We gave them all these new powers. I had issues with people, with clients in Piscataway and other towns in the area that were negatively affected by those environmental laws. Like, I had a student in class. He lived in Piscataway too. He told me, I know exactly what you're talking about. I bought a house. I own a house in Piscataway. He's like, I got a front porch with it's got a wooden front porch, and it's got a cover above the front porch. He's like, it got infested with termites. So the porch started collapsing, and even the roof above the porch started leaning down like this, you know, at an angle. It's a matter of time before it collapses. It's a death trap waiting for happen to some guest that comes on my front porch. They're going to fall through it. The roof is going to collapse. Somebody's going to get killed. He's like, so I wanted to rebuild, you know, rip it out and rebuild my front porch and the roof. So he went down to the building department in Piscataway, and they told him he also needed to get permission from the DEP.
Oh, man.
And he's like, the DEP? I'm just trying to rebuild my front porch. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
From the DEP. They're like, well, there's no regulations. You know, your house is within 600 feet of a water storm drain. said, so? And he's like, well, what are you talking about? What was storm drain anyway? Are you talking about the gully that's dry, that never sees water? And they're like, well, yeah, because that's been classified as a place for stormwater and excessive drainage to run off on. Even if it hasn't seen water in the last 50 years, it's now regulated by the DEP as if there's water sitting in it. So any construction that's done within 600 feet of that, which your house is within 600 feet, is now falls under the regulation authority of the DEP. So he went down, he got the permit from the city to do the construction, went to the DEP to get the permission from them, and they said no. So he had to argue with them and threaten to sue them. And he said, you know what? Forget it. I'll leave it the way it is, but I want you to sign off on a letter that the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection is going to take responsibility for anyone who gets killed on my front porch and on my property because you refused to allow me to rebuild my porch that got eaten by termites because of some ridiculous environmental regulation. I'm not building my house any closer to the water or where the water could be. You know, I'm just trying to replace what I got there that was eaten by termites. Somebody's going to get killed. You know, and I want you then to say that I don't have permission. I want you to put that in writing, that I do not have the permission to build there, so that the DEP takes responsibility. So if anybody gets hurt, that's on you, not on me. And then all of a sudden they changed their mind and they gave him permission to build.
Oh, man.
That's what you got to go through sometimes when dealing with these environmental agencies. Okay. Now, one of the story is it has something to do with real estate, and you may come across these kinds of issues. All right, so these are those areas that the DEP has authority to regulate. The Highlands Water Protection Act gives them the authority to regulate the Highlands areas of the state. So it says that when you're paving over 1 acre or more, areas of the highlands of the state to protect the area's drinking water, it falls under the Highland Water Protection Act. The Pinelands Protection Act regulates 22% of the state's land, which is within the Pine Barrens or the Pineland National Reserve. And the Wetlands Act requires a permit to excavate, fill, or build on certain areas. And it covers both coastal areas as well as inland freshwater areas. The Coastal Area Facility Reviews Act, CAFRA, deals with clustering for open space and planned unit developments. And the Waterfront Development Act regulates outside of CAFRA. The DEP must approve plans for any waterfront development on any navigable water or stream. And after Superstorm Sandy, FEMA redrew the flood maps. Actually, they redrew the flood maps again after, what was the one after Sandy?
Oh,
Irene? Is that Irene? Hurricane Irene? No. Was it? No, it was something else.
Katrina?
Katrina. There we go. Thank you. They redrew the flood maps again after that. So they often redraw flood maps in here in New Jersey, mainly for insurance reasons. But okay, so we also have the Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act. These rules are intended to protect the public from unscrupulous developers and marketeers from undue sales pressure, like with timeshare sales. Buyers have 7 calendar days to cancel the contract for the purchase or lease of such lands for new construction only. Advertisements for new construction out of the state for out-of-state properties marketed in New Jersey and for large in-state subdivisions with 100 lots or more, or those with common elements with at least 10 units, stipulate that all contracts and disclosures must be available in the same language the property is advertised in. So the contracts and disclosures must be professionally translated by multilingual experts. Not by you, because you understand, because you're multilingual, okay? Because some words in the everyday English language have separate legalese meanings to them, and that could be in the foreign languages as well. So you cannot just translate the contracts. It needs to be done by a professional who's familiar with the law and legal terms, as well as the different languages, being multilingual, okay? So this language requirement applies to all properties advertised in New Jersey, not just new ones from both in and out of state. So basically, if you are advertising a property for sale in a language other than English, all contracts and disclosures must be made available in the same language that you advertised it in. So if a property is advertised for sale in Spanish, do all the contracts and disclosures need to be made available in English only, Spanish only, English and Spanish, or I do not deserve a real estate license? Which one of those options is right?
Spanish only?
If a property is advertised in Spanish, do all the contracts and disclosures need to be available in English only, Spanish only, or English and Spanish only?
English, Spanish.
Both? Both, right?
You both say both?
Both.
No.
Oh.
It's a Spanish only, because I only said, the question specifically said it was only advertised in Spanish only. This is a perfect example of where you do not inject common sense. I know, because you think, well, you put it in you got the listing in English, right? You put it in the MLS and that's in English, but then you're going to advertise it in Spanish, so it should be in both English and Spanish, right? Okay, do not inject that common sense, though, into a question. If the question just says the property was advertised in Spanish, don't assume anything.
The Spanish.
They're brain dead. Okay, don't assume anything. Just say, take it for what it is. They said it's advertised in Spanish, so therefore it was, as far as I'm concerned, it was only
The
advertised.
whole contract gonna be Spanish.
Okay, so it's Spanish only, okay? That's how they get a little tricky on you, because they know people try to inject common sense into things, but don't do that. If the question didn't specifically talk about something, don't inject something into the question that wasn't there, okay?
Mm.
That just shows you how how easy it is to be tricked on some of those. So let's do the highlights for the notes that you just saw on my previous slide, page 345 and 346. Let's do all these notes. That the rules are intended to protect the public from unscrupulous developers or marketeers from undue sales pressure. And buyers have up to 7 calendar days to cancel contracts for the purchase or sale of such lands. Similar regulations apply to the sale within the state of New Jersey for large subdivisions when ownership of common areas are involved. And then I had you write all above the word properties that are advertised in New Jersey in languages other than English. Subsequent forms must be made available to prospective purchasers in the same language that was used in the original advertisement. Now, all properties, that's all properties, residential, commercial, etc. But it applies to new construction only.
Okay.
Oh, wow, it's 84 degrees out. 85, sorry. No wonder why it's warm up here. I got a little fan on. It's time to put the air conditioner on, even though I got the window open. All right, so you guys have all these highlights and all these notes here? Basically, these notes are basically saying the same thing as the notes that I gave you about, remember the slide I have that talks about all the different rights of rescission, all the different rescission periods? So Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act, these rules are intended to protect the public from unscrupulous developers and marketeers from undue sales pressure like with timeshare sales. Buyers have 7 calendar days to cancel the contract for the purchase or lease of such lands for new construction only. Advertisements for new construction of out-of-state properties marketed to New Jersey and large in-state subdivisions with 100 lots or more, or those that contain common area elements with at least 10 units, stipulate that all contracts and disclosures must be available in the same language the property is advertising. So the language requirement applies to all properties advertised in New Jersey, not just the new ones from both in and out of state. So let's highlight here page 346. For certain subdivisions within the state, primarily those that involve common elements, condominiums, cooperatives, and planned unit developments, and townhouse developments, and for subdivisions with more than 100 lots with a homeowners association, they fall under the Planned Real Estate Development Act. So if a New Jersey subdivision falls within the requirements of the act, the buyer, again, has the right to cancel a contract within 7 calendar days. But that deals with new construction. That's the right of rescission they're talking about.
Right of rescission.
Yeah, the right of rescission for the purchase of these properties. But the language requirement for when you advertise a property in a language other than English, it doesn't matter. It applies to all properties advertised in New Jersey, not just the new ones from both in and out of state. So
What is that
clearer on this, so on page 340.
what is that now construction?
New
New
construction.
construction.
New
New, right?
Yeah, so the registration and disclosure requirement applies to original offerings. Original offerings means the new construction, only
Yeah.
not the single resale properties, but to the new construction. When they're talking about the right of rescission. But when they're talking about advertising in languages and having all the documents and disclosures available in other languages, well, you gotta, that applies to both resale and new properties. See something. Want to make sure that my thing here. Actually, yeah, so I was actually wrong on the slide where I put applies to new construction only on the previous slide.
Hmm.
Where it's talking about the advertising languages. So once again, the right of rescission applies only to new construction, but the advertising language applies to both new construction as well as existing properties. So I should probably clarify that in the notes on this slide.
Other than English.
Here we, yeah, we're almost done with this chapter here. So let me just put an insert text box here.
So the last paragraph is saying that it's not only English, it's other language also, right?
Yeah, well, anytime you advertise a property other than English, because we already have all the contracts and disclosures in English. But if you advertise a property in languages other than English, well, all the contracts and disclosures must be available in those languages as well.
Okay.
And that applies to existing properties as well as new construction.
Mhm. I'm done with the highlighting.
So I'm just making my notes here that about that. And
We
correct-
wrote it down, DF.
Okay, so
Mhm.
maybe I could fit all that there on that slide now. Can you see all that on your slide? Or some of it cut off?
Now I can see the everything. Advertising.
Right. Advertising in languages requiring disclosures in the same language is for new and existing properties. Right? And then on this side, the registration disclosure requirement applies to new offerings, not resales. And that's dealing with the right of rescission.
Can you go back next last one?
But yeah,
I'm almost done in the is for new. Thank you. Yes. I'm done.
okay. All right, so the UCC, it's the state's minimum standard for construction. We're not talking about the Uniform Commercial Code, which regulates the sale of businesses now. We're dealing with the UCC, which is the state's minimum standard for construction. That database is maintained by the DCA, the Department of Community Affairs, and in Trenton there, and it regulates construction, alterations, renovation, occupancy, and use of all buildings if your municipality doesn't have its own building code enforcement officials. Either way, the DCA inspects public buildings and schools, commercial properties, like large shopping centers and buildings with 3 or more units, not counting the unit the owner lives in. And so UCC, that's the state's minimum standard for construction. That's the building codes. The Uniform Construction Code that must be followed by all local communities. The Commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs regulates the construction, alteration, renovation, occupancy, and use of all buildings. Now, this is good to know, and put that bracket around this and put good to know there. Existing buildings do not need to conform. So if they change the building codes, do old buildings need to be brought up to the current building codes? The answer is no. not unless those buildings are found to be unsafe, or they're doing construction on those buildings where the alterations or repairs are more than half the value of the existing building. However, the entire building must be brought up to code. When alterations amount between 25 and 50% of the building value, only the new construction must conform. So if more than half of the value of the building is being affected by the construction or alterations, the entire building needs to be brought up to the current building codes. But when the alterations are only affecting 25 to 50% of the building's value, only the new construction needs to be brought up to code. That could prove to be useful advice for you. I actually used that for a lady that owned a bar. You go into the bathroom and it smelled awful sometimes. And it wasn't because of cleaning. It was because the way the sewer pipes were, they needed to be redone. And she didn't want to fix it. She's like, well, if I do the repair, I got to take down, I got to destroy, I got to demolish the bathrooms and dig out underneath the ground to excavate to get to those sewer pipes and change the things. And she's like, then I'm going to have to bring the whole building up to the code. I don't have the money to do that. And I told her, no, you don't. I said, those bathrooms, you got them on the edge of the building there, and it's not going to be affecting more than half the value of the building. So only that new construction of those bathrooms need to be brought up to code. The whole building is not going to be required to be brought up to code. And so she was able then to fix those, get those bathrooms repaired, because previously she was holding out and not doing it. And everybody had to deal with, sometimes you walk into the bar and it's not just the bathrooms that stink. Sometimes it stunk up the whole bar. The whole bar smelled like a urinal. And I'm like, that's disgusting. I'm like, you serve food here, you have, bars and customers, but they got to be subjected to the smell. And, I got into that conversation with her. I was like, why don't you just fix the bathrooms, And so I gave her that advice on there. She was able to fix it. And then, her business improved after that. Because
wow, that's nice.
And it smells like a shithole. It's disgusting, so I gave her that advice and she used it and she found it helpful. Did I make any money off of that? No, she wasn't selling the building, but she found it useful. See, that knowledge can be useful for you. All right, so moving along. New Warranty and Builders Registration Act we need to know for both exams. It requires all builders of new homes must register a warranty against new defects for up to 10 years. So basically, it's all new construction in New Jersey comes with a 10-year home warranty. So the builder cannot self-insure or get the insurance from any other insurance company. They must buy it through the Department of Community Affairs in Trenton, which insures it. So I wonder what they do with all that money. Hopefully the DCA in Trenton, the government, is not blowing our money like they did in the pension plans for police and fire people and teachers. They like to borrow money from senior citizens and pension plans, and I will pay it back before they ever need it. And then they never do because the politicians are out of office. They don't care anymore. So, but hopefully that money is there for that insurance policies that all those builders bought. So the enforcement, if there is no enforcement inspectors, the state will conduct an inspection and code enforcement activities. They'll send out their own state inspectors from the DCA in Trenton to do the inspections of the buildings. So construction permits must be issued before any constructions, alterations, demolition, or change of use or occupancy of a building can be undertaken. So let's highlight on page 347 that under the New Home Warranty Builders Registration Act, all builders of new homes must register a warranty against new home defects for varying periods up to 10 years with the DCA. it is a 10-year warranty. I know it says for varying periods up to 10 years. It's a 10-year warranty. It's just that certain items like the HVAC systems, they're no longer covered after year 3. You know, that's what they mean for varying periods. Some things are not covered for 10 years, but for varying periods, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, maybe the construction of the building or the roof or whatever, those warranties, well, they got different varying periods that those items are covered. And then lastly, for 10 years is going to be the basic construction of the building, which I actually had somebody had to file a claim in a high-rise penthouse condo in New Brunswick. It was a little bit of shoddy construction there on a 25th story.
Wow.
Where you walk out on your what do you call it, your balcony, 25 stories in the air, and the bottom of it is the concrete starting to separate and crumble. So that needed to be repaired, and they filed the buyers of the condo that were my clients bought it. Actually, the clients, the seller and the buyer of that condo penthouse unit. It is under warranty still because it was less than 10 years old. So I told them, hey, listen, you got a 10-year warranty with the state of New Jersey. State of New Jersey is holding it down in Trenton. If the homeowner doesn't have that policy in hand, you can look it up with the state of New Jersey, contact the DCA in Trenton. And they did, and they were able to get the work done with cooperation of the building managers and all that stuff. But,
Oh,
that was pretty interesting. 25-story unit, and you know, the concrete's falling apart. You don't
wow.
want to fall from that, right?
I know.
But you need to know this for exams. The Warranty Builders and Registration Act requires 10-year warranties on all new construction.
Mhm.
Excuse me.
Like insurance? No.
What's that?
It's work like an insurance, the warranty? No.
It's insurance. It's a homeowner's. It's a home warranty. It's an insurance policy for new construction for various things up to 10 years.
Mhm.
Okay. So how do construction permits work? So I looked at this little slide that explains it, but it's here in the book. This discusses all this stuff. Construction permits on page 347. So the UCC is the Uniform Construction Code. It requires construction permit before any construction, alterations, demolition, or change of use of the building can be taken, or change of occupancy. Applicants must provide information like the location of the property, construction plans, estimated cost of the work, names and addresses of the owners and the designated contractors that are going to do the work. The local construction officials must then inspect the application and the property to determine whether it conforms with the requirements of the building code. And then within 20 days, they have to either approve the plans and issue a permit or reject it in writing with the cause of rejection. If rejected, the applicant may revise the plans to meet the requirements or appeal their rejection to the Construction Board of Appeals. Now, I know some towns, they try playing games with this. Say that you're doing some renovations on your house. You're putting an addition on, or you're renovating the house where you got some framing that needs to be done. You have some electrical and some plumbing. Okay. That's 3 different building departments at City Hall that need to approve it. So I know in my town, they try screwing around with people. Instead of giving them the permit within 20 days, it should go to all 3 of those departments, and all 3 departments need to give their approval within 20 days. Instead, they do this. They'll send it to the construction, whoever is in charge of the framing of the building, to get the approval in 20 days. And then they'll pass it off to the electrical, so that the electrical then has 20 days to give the approval. And then they'll pass it to the plumbing department, which then they have 20 days. So now you're 60 days waiting for building permits.
Wow.
That's not the way that it works. It's you submit your plans. All of those three things need to get back to you within 20 days.
Yeah.
Because you can file complaints now with the state.
But nobody's complaining. They just, oh, whenever you renovate, you something, extend your bathroom or extend your something. Oh, that take long.
Yeah, you got to wait for City Hall. You know, listen, City Hall doesn't do everything right all the time. You know, I'm not talking about the corruption that happens. I'm just talking about just basic laziness, and this is
I
the way
know.
they do it because it's that's the way they want to do it. You know, but that's not the way the rules state that they should be doing. You know. So once issued, the construction permit may be revoked if it contains any false or misleading statements or omissions on the application, or if the construction is not started within 12 months of giving the issuance of the permit to do the work, or if it's suspended, if the work is suspended for 3 months or longer after the work has begun, then those permits may be revoked. So all of it says that somewhere in here, but let's just highlight this part that we need to know. That the UCC, Uniform Construction Code, requires a construction permit to be issued by each county or municipality before any construction, alteration, demolition, or change of use of a building can be undertaken.
If you extend anything in the house, like if you extend something like first floor, second floor, you need to have permission, right?
You need permits. Yep, you need building permits. Like even if you want to finish your basement,
Yeah.
you're finishing it off. You're putting framing in the walls. You're maybe running electrical wires or something. You need a permit. If you didn't get a permit to finish off your basement, and now you're going to sell your house a couple of years later, building department comes in to give that CCO because you said you didn't do any work, so they go to get that continued certificate of occupancy before any transfer of ownership can take place. They go there and they look, wait a minute, this looks like it's new. We don't have on our plans that you finished the basement, that you got a permit to finish the basement. You did this work without a permit.
I know.
You need to get a permit for this now, and it needs to be inspected. You know, if they're going to take it light on you. Otherwise, they could just tell you, you didn't get permits for this work. You need to rip it out. And we're fining you thousands of dollars for not getting the permits to do it. They could actually fine you tens of thousands of dollars for this.
That's true. This is very common. I see that some people, they have a room in the garage, and when they put on sale, they have to.
Yeah, you can't live in a garage. That's not living space. You know?
Right.
That's something that's happening in my town right now too. We got a huge Hasidic Jewish population that's moving in. They're buying the houses. They don't need the garage. They don't use the garage. They park their car on the street or in the driveway. So they try to finish off the garage to living space so more people can.
Yeah, they're making like a one room, you know.
No. You need building permits for this. You can't just
That's true. Yeah.
But see, we're having a little problem with their community as their large community moves into our area. We're having problems with them because they ignore the zoning laws, the permits. And actually, one of them said at one of the public buildings, at one of the public meetings, you know, the town hall meetings, they were like, what was the phrase that they use? It's better to ask for permit. What's it? Oh my God, what is this thing? Along the lines of better to ask for an excuse later, or better to ask for forgiveness than for permission.
What? Oh, yeah.
So, instead of going to get a permit,
Forgiveness.
we're going to do this. And if you catch us, if you got a problem with it, we'll ask for your forgiveness later. So they're basically totally ignoring the zoning laws. Like some of these houses they're building are way larger than are normally allowed. They go right up to the property line, ignoring the setbacks. And, you know, once a house is like that, what are you going to require us to tear down the whole house, you know? So they say, better to ask for permission, better to ask for forgiveness than for permission, you know? And it's like, no, that's not the way that it works. But yet nobody's
Right.
enforcing it. We got our building enforcement code officials, they're not doing it because our mayor was in bed with them at the beginning, enticing them to come to town because he had some kind of a political arrangement with them where they got donations and all kinds of stuff and they're backing in exchange for looking the other way when it comes to constructing synagogues and all kinds of other stuff. So they've been building this stuff in residential areas. They've been building houses of worship without permits. They've been building houses everywhere without permits, you know. Like they put, normally you have a basement. Hey, sometimes you can have a very deep basement with the 10-foot ceilings, right? These people got 2-story deep basements that they serve as bathhouses. You know, it's well, you need permits to do this stuff. You can't just start doing that.
That's
They're
true.
doing anything they want, right? I don't, it's not a thing against, I don't have anything against Hasidic Jews. I'm just saying this is what's happening with this community moving in right now. This is the way that they're treating the building department because the mayor, he's kind of like looking the other way too, because they were going to sue him because as they start moving into town, they tried getting involved in the local government. And the mayor got caught on tape in my town making anti-Semitic remarks saying that no people with those hats are going to be running my town telling me what to do. So it's going to work for me if I have anything to say about it. And somebody recorded it and it was in the media. You guys ever hear it in New Jersey? It was about Linden. The Linden mayor basically made all kinds of anti-Semitic remarks. So now when it comes to their building stuff, he's kind of like looking the other way, not enforcing anything, you know. So it's interesting to see what's going on in this town. There's so much corruption. It's unbelievable.
So,
Okay.
only one thing. Sometime I see when I was looking for house, some houses, they were making kitchen in the basement. They made the kitchen and there is no entrance even.
Yeah.
And there is a,
So when you sell that house, you need to rip that out because
Right.
you're going to need to get the municipal inspection. You're going to need to get the CO or CCO inspection when transferring the ownership. It's required by law. So when they come in there, if they see beds set up or if they see a kitchen set up in the basement, you're going to get fined for doing construction without a permit. You're going to be fined for having living space that's not allowed there. And they're going to require you to rip it out. And you're not going to be able to sell it until it's taken care of. So I tell people when I go into their basement, they got it all finished up. I'm like, you got to rip this crap out. There's no way you're going to pass a city inspection. You need to rip it out. And don't leave like a bed laying against the wall or something. They know that then they're going to start looking for signs that you've been using this as a bedroom, you know? So you need to rip this stuff out and remove it from the basement. You can't sell the house like this. You're not going to get the
that's
permit.
true. Mm.
All right. So after that building and construction that you do, you need to get it inspected, right? Any new construction requires a CO inspection. That's for the whole building being new. We call that the certificate of occupancy to ensure that all the work was done up to code and there's no conditions that cause a threat to the health or safety of the occupants. So that's a CO inspection. A COC is a certificate of compliance. When you have an existing building that now you're going to be doing improvements to or putting an addition on, that inspection is not called a CO, it's called a COC, a certificate of compliance to show that the work was done on an existing structure and within the code. And if you didn't do any work to your house and you're simply just transferring ownership, there's a permit called a CCO, the continued certificate of occupancy. It's required anytime you transfer ownership. As long as a fire inspection. All right. Now, let me tell you something. There's these 3 different types of inspections that get done. A CO is the permit when you got new construction. A COC is for existing building when you do repairs or improvements to an existing structure. And a CCO is an inspection when you didn't do any work, but
Transfer
it's
ownership.
declared upon transfer of ownership. Now, some cities, they call all these inspections a CO. They don't have a different name for them. They call it a CO, no matter which inspection it is that you're doing. You just got to tell them what the purpose of the inspection's for. And they're like, okay, I need to get a CO because we're selling the property. There was no construction or anything done. We're just getting okay. Other municipalities, they're very anal about it. No, it's either a CO, a COC, or a CCO. Okay. And you'd be surprised which communities are more anal about this, about being accurate in the name calling of this. Newark is surprisingly very strict with this stuff.
Mm.
But then you drive around Newark and a lot of it is a slum. So it's very interesting that they're home inspectors. I sold a house in Newark that guy. It was an older house. He remodeled it, redid stuff and everything. They were very, very strict on stuff. Like he had a little side yard that was raised, and they had a little concrete retaining wall there that was maybe about this tall, maybe about 8 inches, 12 inches tall, and it was just a block. The inspector said the owner needs to paint the block. Why? It's a retaining wall. It's been there for years like that. And he said, I don't care. It's a retaining wall. In order to preserve that structure, to make it last longer, the block needs to be painted. You can't just have exposed block. It's going to wear down quicker. And I said, are you on the same block as me? Look at this house right next door. The back of the building looks like it had a fire over there, and it's exposed to the elements. Look at the roof on the garage over here. You could see in the backyard of these people. It's collapsed. You got no problem with that? And they said, well, if they file for the permit to sell the house, we'll deal with it then. He's like, but until they do, no, we don't just go out doing inspections like that. But you called me for an inspection. We're doing an inspection of your property. You need to be up to this code. And they were also like, well, the house itself, there was the concrete block that was, when you have aluminum siding, vinyl siding, there's that bottom piece of block down at the bottom before it touches the ground.
Yeah.
It's like the paint is peeling on that. You know what that means? Probably lead paint, right?
Lead paint, yeah.
So they're like, it all needs to be scraped and repainted. Otherwise, you're not going to get the pass. So he said, basically, right now you're failing the inspection. They need to repaint. They need to paint this block, exposed block, and over here, this block where the paint is peeling, they need to scrape it off and repaint that as well. I was like, all right. Yeah, you wouldn't figure that the town like Newark, with all these other houses around it that are like falling apart, they got a blind eye to them, but this one, the guy's looking to sell. Well, you need to be up to this high standard. Wow. All right. So you guys highlighted this about the certificate of occupancy, and you should know about the 3 different types of permits here. Do they talk about it here? Yeah, they talk about existing buildings are requiring a certificate of continued occupancy.
Continuing occupation.
Yeah.
And that is for transfer the ownership.
Yeah, it's simply when there's going to be a transfer of ownership.
Mm.
See, look at this. Even up here, they wrote, before issuing a certificate, the local construction official must conduct an inspection to determine whether the structure complies with all the local ordinances and the regulations of the Uniform Construction Code. Many municipalities now require a certificate of occupancy for transfer of title or change of tenants. All 1-family and 2-family homes must be inspected for the presence of smoke detectors prior to the transfer of title. Do you guys know where smoke detectors need to be installed?
Yeah.
Where do they need to be installed?
Each floor and the basement.
A smoke detector needs to be installed within 10 feet of any sleeping quarter.
10 feet. Yeah.
Each level requires each structure requires one carbon monoxide detector, but many municipalities require one on each level. But state requirement is that each structure just requires one. So here we go. Smoke detectors are required on each level of the dwelling within 10 feet of any sleeping quarter. Carbon monoxide detectors with 10-year sealed non-replaceable batteries must be installed as of the update of the law in 2019. And homes that were built after 1978 required hardwired detectors. Most municipalities require one on each level, as well as hardwired detectors with battery backups. So fire extinguishers must be mounted in kitchens within 10 feet of them using the hardware that they came with. They must be rated to put out ABC type fires and must be under 10 pounds so that they could be grabbed really quick with emergencies. But check this out. As of this year, our governor is on his way out. We got an election this year. He's been passing all kinds of crazy legislation, and instituting new taxes and raising taxes for all kinds of things. He's basically lighting a match and throwing it behind him on his way out the door. Now, this is something that I really can't make heads or tails of why he did this, but as of March 2025, it's no longer required by state law. However, local fire officials still may require the fire extinguishers. So the governor removed the requirement for fire extinguishers to be installed in the kitchen or within 10 feet of the kitchen. That was a state law. He removed that requirement for some reason. But what I've found so far is that most of the local fire inspectors still require it. So even though it's not required by state law, so state inspections won't require it, your local inspectors do.
And it has to be in kitchen and basement, one each level, or 10
No.
feet.
No,
Fire.
the fire extinguisher has to be installed in the kitchen or within 10 feet of the kitchen. And it has to be a small one that's easy to handle. It has to be under 10 pounds so that you could grab it with one hand and quickly react. Now, where did this law come from? It came from back when, I forget the governor, that big scandal that governor, he was married, had children and everything, and then he bowed out of being the governor when it came out that he was gay. You guys remember that?
Oh yeah.
McGreevey. Was that his name? McGreevey? Yeah, I think it was.
McGreevey. Yes,
Yeah.
McGreevey.
McGreevey was governor. When he bowed out, somebody took his place. The guy's name was Richard Cody. So Richard Cody was the acting governor of the state of New Jersey for that short time period until the next election. Okay, so during this time, acting governor Richard Cody was going to schools for fire, to see the kids, and they were doing the fire safety programs with the firemen. And there's a lot of fires in kitchens where the parents were cooking and the children reached up to the pot and pans. This is why they tell you now, turn the handles inward so the kids can't grab the pans. But there was a rush of incidents where children were reaching up and grabbing the pot handles and the pans filled with grease poured on the child and they caught on fire. What's the worst thing you could put on a grease fire? Water.
Fire.
But what's the first thing that comes to mind to put out a fire? Water. So you're next to the sink, you got maybe a cup sitting in the sink with water, throwing the child to try to put out the fire. Worst thing you could do, it spreads the fire. So there was a rush of these instances where this happened in New Jersey within a short time frame. So the governor was at this school talking about fire safety because of these rash of fires. And then a fifth grader made a suggestion to him. He said, how come you don't just pass a law that requires a fire extinguisher be in every kitchen? He scratched his head and he was like,
You're
good
right.
idea.
That's a good idea.
Based on the suggestion of a fifth grader.
Wow.
That's been in law ever since then. But now our current governor Murphy, in March of this year, for some reason, he just no longer requires it. But your local fire inspectors, they still do. I haven't found any yet that said that it's not required. It's not required according to state law, but your local rules may still require it. So keep that in mind.
Yes.
So let's do the highlight here. That in New Jersey, in New Jersey, a change of occupancy for any one family or two family dwelling requires the buildings have smoke detectors on each level of the dwelling and within 10 feet of every sleeping quarter. And the state also requires at least one properly installed carbon monoxide detector and an approved fire extinguisher. Okay, so the fire extinguisher is no longer a state requirement, but it is a local requirement. So let me make a notation of that here for a change in the coming book as well. That's on page 348. No more state requirement. The fire extinguishers. But local requirements. So what is that slide number there for that?
Miss, do we have to set up with type ABC? I don't know.
Yeah,
Did I do
yeah. Now, what does that mean? You need to write that here. Type ABC. So what type of fire extinguisher? Well, it's a fire extinguisher that's rated to put out ABC type fires. And it has to be under 10 pounds. That's the specific requirement of the fire extinguisher. Okay.
Does it say that? Does it say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So write this in your book. Type AB after where it says fire extinguisher. Write type ABC under 10 pounds.
Yeah. And 10 years.
And under carbon monoxide detector, write 10-year sealed battery.
The 10 year for the smoke detector. 10
Oh.
year.
If it's a combination carbon monoxide detector, yes.
Okay.
Which I think they often are, but you can get separate carbon monoxide and smoke detectors.
Mhm.
So let's finish out this chapter as quick as possible here. Okay, so this is that law that type A fires put out trash, wood, paper. B puts out liquids, gases, and solvents, and C puts out electrical fires. And hold on one second.
I'm here.
Okay, so hotel, motel, multiple dwelling, health and safety law. Enacted to ensure that residents in New Jersey have decent standards and safe units of dwelling space. It requires a state inspection. We often call that state inspection the green card inspection. That's the industry lingo, not an official name. And it has nothing to do with immigration. They call it the green card simply because in the past, when you passed the inspection, they gave you the card on a certificate that showed that it passed inspection, and the color of it was green. So they call it the green card inspection.
Something
So-
like that. We had it in previous chapter, green card.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
These are also the same buildings that require the green card inspection. Those are the same buildings that require the truth in lending, truth in renting booklet to be given to the tenants in those buildings.
Mhm.
Right? So they must be performed, these inspections have to be performed at least once every 5 years. And it applies to buildings with 3 or more rental units, not counting the unit that the owner lives in. It has to have 3 rental units available. Hotels and motels with 10 or more units of dwelling space or sleeping quarter facilities for 25 persons or more are required to have a state inspection once every 3 years. And these inspections can be unannounced spot
Yeah.
inspections. So if you're ever
Because it's a commercial area, right?
so if you're ever dealing with the sale of a hotel or a motel, you need to make sure they're up on their inspections and they're ready for that, you know. Although a lot of work may need to get done, which could be very costly for the investor who's buying that hotel or motel. All right. So let's do the highlight here on page 348. Multiple dwellings with 3 or more units are inspected, and I drew this little arrow here, are inspected at least once every 5 years, and hotels at least once every 3 years.
Yeah.
And then I wrote here in the margin, state green card inspection. It's actually just called the state inspection, but you need to be familiar with the term green card because a lot of real estate agents still refer to the state inspection as a green card inspection. And if they're talking about the green card, or attorneys too, they call it the green card inspection. And if they talk about the green card inspection and you're looking at them like they got 3 heads, you know, you're not going to seem very professional. Like, you know, what is that? They're like, oh, you're one of those new agents. You don't know what you're doing. But familiarize yourself with that term green card. Okay.
Yes.
You got these
I get it.
highlights and
Yeah.
and the words there on the side.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's it. That concludes chapter 18. Let's do the key terms to review. I believe there's only one of them for this chapter. Yes, there is.
It's a big thing.
So let's do these and we're done with this chapter and the day.
Wow.
Charges to developers for extra roads, schools, and so forth. What do we call those charges that are passed on to developers for extra roads, schools, and so forth because of their development project?
Charges to developers. Okay.
They're called impact fees.
Impact fee?
Impact.
Impact fees.
7 is A, impact fees. Because of the impact that your development will have in the local community, you have to pay these fees for these charges. So 7 is A. A test of the soil's absorption and drainage capacity. What do we call the test? I even showed you a video about this. A test that shows how well the soil absorbs drainage.
Oh, yeah. It start from P. 10. Percolation test.
The percolation test or the perk tests. So yeah, 10 is B. Division of property into more than one building lot.
Into more than one building lot. Division.
Yeah, what's this
Sub-
chapter? What is this chapter all about? When you take
Subdivision.
split it to more than one, it's classified as a subdivision, correct? So
Okay.
subdivision, 16 is C. Community with dense zoning and developers plan for the entire land use as much as possible.
Then zoning and developers plan to.
Yeah,
enhance
the
land use.
community
Is that-
with zoning and developers plan for the entire land use. What do they call it?
Is that density zoning?
No, what do they call the community?
Oh, community. Okay.
The community with dense zoning and developers plan for the entire land use.
Warranty and builders, no. Okay, community with dense zoning and
Density zone.
land use.
Density zone.
No, it's the planned unit development. Planned unit development. 12 is
Oh, D.
12 is D as in David. A group setting standards for local subdivisions. Who needs to give the approvals for all this?
Bureau, subdivided land scale. Okay.
No.
Hold on.
In your municipality, what group sets the standards for local subdivisions?
Uniform Code, Construction Code, UCC.
That's a law. What
I don't
group
know.
sets the standards for local subdivisions?
Subdivision,
Plan Real Estate Development Act.
Nope, it's the planning board. The planning board. 13 is E.
construction permit.
No, it's the planning board.
Or the Planning Board.
13 is E, the planning board.
13 is E.
The planning board is the group in your municipality that sets standards for local subdivisions. The planning board of appeals. 13 is E. A halt to development.
Moratorium.
9 is F. New Jersey standard for building.
Construction permit.
No, what is the New Jersey standards for building, for putting that construction together?
Oh. The
What
first
is-
one?
What is the
UCC.
standard for that construction?
Oh.
UCC.
Yes, the Uniform Construction Code, 17
Yeah.
E.
E. No, sorry.
G. 17 is G as in George or Gary.
G.
The the United States requirement for some developments to be registered with this agency called the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
That's the last one. 18. Warranty and Builders Registration Act.
No, that's a state law. We're talking about the United States, the U.S. requirement for some developments to be registered with the CFPB.
Planned Real Estate Development Act.
It's the Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act. 8 is H.
H.
8 is H.
Wow.
State regulations for builders of new homes.
Oh, new home. Construction permit.
The state regulations for builders of new homes, they say that all homes must include this.
Yeah, that's the new construction.
Is this? What is the state regulation that requires that builders of new homes include something?
The last one, 18. Warranty and Builders Registration.
Yeah, the Warranty Builders and Registration Act, 18 is I. They require to include a 10-year home warranty, right? For all new construction. Permits buyers up to 7 calendar days to cancel the contract or lease or purchase of such lands. What permits buyers up to 7 calendar days to cancel contracts for the lease or purchase of such lands?
Is that construction permit?
Well, this is for new construction.
Okay.
Permits the buyers that 7-day right of rescission. What gives them that 7-day right of rescission? It's the
Plan.
It's the Real Estate Sales Full Disclosure Act. 15 is J. 15 is J. A law requiring registration of certain developments within New Jersey, within the state.
Certain development within New Jersey law requiring.
Law requiring registration of certain developments within New Jersey.
I don't want to guess.
Environmental impact.
That's the Planned Real Estate Development Act. 11 is K. Zoning that allows more living units per acre than usual.
That's density zoning.
Yes, it is. Density zoning. 5 is L. A map of a town, section, or subdivision.
First one? No. Bureau of Subdivision Land Sales Control.
This clustering.
We're looking for a map of a town,
Map.
section, or subdivision.
Plat.
A plat. It's called a plat.
Yes. M.
14 is M. 14 is M. New Jersey state agency that approves and registers some out-of-state properties. What do we call that? New Jersey agency, which is within the Department of the Real Estate Commission, that approves and registers state projects that are advertised in the state of New Jersey.
Is it like giving to government? Something like that?
No.
No. Out
Bu-
of state.
Bureau de Subdivided Land Sales Control.
Yeah,
The number-
it's the Bureau of Subdivided Land Sales Control, which basically consists of one guy that works for the Real Estate Commission.
Yeah.
Anytime there's an out-of-state subdivision, or timeshares or things of that nature, if they want to offer them for sale and market them for sale in New Jersey, they need to register that with the Bureau. So they'll pay for the plane ticket and airfare and meals and hotel stay for this guy to go there to their state, visit their property, and then make sure all the paperwork is in order. To make sure they're not selling land that is like swampland in Florida or something like that. They want to make sure it's an actual project that that is taking place. So
out of state property is like a subdivision, right?
well, yeah, it's subdivision, but it's in a different state.
Different state, yeah.
So any new construction out of state in a different state, before it can be advertised in New Jersey, state of New Jersey needs to make sure it's really there. We got to do something to try to protect the consumers. So the state of New Jersey has one guy in this bureau. So hey, that's a pretty good job to have, right? You're always traveling, going to these vacation destination resort places with all expenses paid. This is this guy's job. But when he gets there, he has to look over the paperwork, insurance, and everything, make sure everything is together and everything's in order. And it's not exactly a vacation for him, even though he's
Right.
Visiting these places. So one is N, as in Nancy, the Bureau of Subdivided Land Sales Control. Now, the local municipality authorization for building plans.
Construction
That's the
permit.
construction permit.
Yeah, 3 is O, the construction permit. Engineering reports often required before building permits are issued. You want to make sure you're not building on any contaminated soil.
That's a 6,
em-
environmental impact.
Yes, 6 is P, the Environmental Impact Study, or EIS.
Yeah.
So 6 is P as in Paul. Turning over private property, like the streets in a subdivision, to a municipality. What do you call giving land to the government for a public use?
Dedication.
4 is Q, dedication. And putting living units closer together to leave more open space.
Clustering.
That's clustering. 2 is R. And that concludes chapter 18.